All right. Well, today I want to welcome David Sturgess to the Private Practice Elevation podcast. Excited to chat with you, David. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. This is one of those fun interviews because I know you're only a few miles away from me, and so we're kind of
Yes,
having the same weather, which is a beautiful spring May day here. So yeah, how's it going in Marietta today?
pretty well. The sun is out. We are just a few miles away from each other. Um, Good temperature for Atlanta moving
Yeah.
into the summer. It's still, you know, bearable.
Yeah, right. You can still get away with like jeans in the morning and a t-shirt, but then usually
Yes,
usually for me it's a change in the afternoon to shorts because kids have soccer practice or the kids just want to play outside, but it gets hot in the afternoon. But I love this time of year.
absolutely. Yeah, good.
Cool. Well, we didn't come here to talk about the weather, so why don't we just jump right in? So tell us tell folks who haven't heard of you, a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and I want to hear just a little bit about your story, what kind of like led you to do what you're doing now.
Yeah. About 20 years ago or so, I was a first responder as a 911 operator at a police department not too far away from here. And that was right around the 9/11 time. And through just different things, transitioning majors, all of that, uh, found myself in psychology and really fascinated by it and um, started to pursue that and went to grad school and had to do that practicum internship type of thing. And with the kind of mentality of first responder and, kind of more of a critical care type of um, work, I guess.
Hmm.
I found a residential treatment facility for youth and worked there for several years, transitioned to a different residential facility for youth. So in all did about 10 or so years in residential. And through that time, my wife and I have a couple of kids. My oldest was starting to get to that adolescent age, and I just wanted to be more present and available to my family. Um, didn't want to work with adolescents and come home to adolescents. Um, and so, just feeling really burnt out as well, with just everything that's involved in residential.
Yeah.
Um, so I found a business consultant, Whitney Owens, Wise Practice Consulting, and transitioned about the last year working at the residential facility um, into developing a private practice on the side. And um, my wife and I had many discussions about numbers and burning the
Yes.
candle at both ends. Um, and about a year into 1, 2 nights a week of private practice, left the hospitals and have been in private practice for about 6 years at this point. So all in all, about 16, 17 years in mental health.
Yeah. Wow. What was that transition like? I'm kind of thinking back to my own transition into like entrepreneurship and kind of leaving a steady job. Like how was it for you when you're kind of living in both worlds?
Well, I think the biggest thing is realizing that I was trained as a clinician. I wasn't trained as a business owner. Um,
Yeah.
I did not have the business acumen to know what is unique to the healthcare industry versus business is business.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter the product or the industry or the service. And so I was comfortable, with doing clinical work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that adjusting my mindset and what are the business things that I need to know that I just innocently I've never gone to school for. You
Right.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was probably what um, I was most anxious about, is
Yeah.
having a family that was reliant on that hospital salary. My wife worked, but not to a level that she could carry all of us, for
Right.
any extended period of time.
Yeah.
Um, and so having that business consultant um, settled a little bit of the fears. They still were there,
Yeah.
Uh,
You just
but
didn't feel alone in it.
right, yeah. And I think with Whitney at Wise Practice Consulting, I wanted to have a faith based component to my private practice,
Yeah.
and she also had developed a group practice, and so she was in that kind of niche population, so to speak.
Yeah.
She was also several steps down the line,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just kept doing my clinical that I knew how to do, and then really leaned into the masterminds and consulting.
Yeah. And so now you're actually a consultant with Wise Practice Consulting now, right?
Yes, I am.
That's
And I
awesome.
focus on the solo practice owners,
Uh-huh.
and kind of doing this transition that we're talking about,
Yeah.
or they've been a solo practice owner and um, they need help to kind of shore some things up. Um,
Yeah.
so
Cool. Well, that's kind of a good segue into our topic and what we want to discuss, and it's really like what are those changes that you need to make when you're going from that, being that therapist, and you're at an agency, or you're looking to get started into private practice, which means, ta-da, you're the business owner.
yes,
Like you said, responsibility, marketing, budgets, cash flow, all that stuff. So we're going to talk about a few changes that you think people need to make, that therapists need to make when we're kind of stepping into that business owner, putting that hat on. So what's really the first change that you really realized that you needed to make as you were making that transition from agency and residential to having your own private practice?
yeah. So the first one is changing the way you think about getting help. And what I mean by that is we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others, right?
Hmm.
Clinically, that's something that is taught. Every therapist needs a therapist, type of
Yeah.
mindset. And when it comes to thinking about how changing the way we think about getting help, um, it's being okay with not knowing what we don't know. Um,
Hmm.
we were trained as clinicians, like I was saying earlier. We weren't trained in business, and part of that is we're going to have to be challenged. We're going to have to be vulnerable. The same things
Hmm.
that we do with our clinical work, in a therapy session. And no one likes vulnerability. No one likes to be challenged. That's not fun. Um, and we've got to make sure that things are on a solid foundation and we're doing things well so that we can stay
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
and keep our doors open for those folks out there that do need our
Yeah.
and that was a big shift, where it's like, okay, if I don't do this well and I don't learn what I don't know,
Hmm.
um, I'm not even going to be able to open the doors or keep the doors open
Right.
uh, to serve the clients that I want to serve. And then in a bigger way, we all go to work to earn a living, to take care of ourselves and the people that we love, the interests that we have. And so I also had to change the way I thought about getting help to ensure I was able to provide for my family and
Right.
um, the organizations that my wife and I want to support in our church and things like that. So we often kind of have a hesitation, to get in the weeds with certain things. And you mentioned some of them, cash flow,
Hmm.
uh, taxes. When you
Yeah.
don't know what all that looks like,
Yeah.
um, it's it's intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, just kind of some of the things that I'm hearing you say, I really appreciate the sort of intentionality that you tied to, getting help, in, stepping in as the business owner, tying it to your responsibility to really your purpose and kind of your vision for your life is kind of what I'm hearing kind of mixed in there. Like, yes, it's getting consultation, it's getting help with your taxes, but the why behind it is because you want to have an impact, with the clients and the population you serve. I hear even beyond that, organizations that you and your wife support and your church and mission and stuff like that. And so I really appreciate that mindset that is kind of, I think it's so important, to tie it to our why. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we going after having a private practice? Why are we going after getting off insurance panels, whatever it is in your business? So I just appreciate that.
Yeah. And I found myself sitting in meetings at the hospitals with that question of why am I in this meeting?
Right. Yeah.
It could have been the memo email type of thing.
Yeah.
And then why are we changing these policies or why are we, doing X, Y, and Z? And you'd get that bureaucratic political kind of
Yeah.
response, which,
Yeah.
a no answer kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and you gotta know your why.
Hmm.
Um, and with what you're doing from website design and helping people with branding and marketing and all that type of stuff, your why is important
Yeah.
to know,
Yeah.
as it relates to that. It also can change. We
Hmm.
can talk about that in a little
Yeah.
bit, but um, it's one thing I think to know why you're getting up every morning and going and doing a small business entrepreneur type stuff, um, versus why this population or why this type of therapy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that kind of, it reminds me and takes me back to the times when I was kind of in corporate and I was working for a nonprofit and it was very bureaucratic. I wasn't in a creative place and I was just so disconnected from the why of my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just having a lot of trouble kind of connecting with the why of this organization. I mean, they were doing great and phenomenal work, but in my personal life, I wanted to, like you said, like be home. We didn't have kids yet. And so we were planning and trying and really wanted to be closer to home to be flexible and so that Liz could work on her private practice and stuff. And so that really that was my why and kind of getting back to that. And now, like, even just, in recent years, it's been so fun to see our clients find more of their clients. And so, like, as a business, as private practice elevation, that comes back to my why. It's like we do this so that, somebody can get out of depression or, you know, let go of suicidal thoughts or impact a marriage, at the end of the day. So it's been such a good reminder, to have those conversations with our clients to not just make it about the marketing or just growing the business, but yeah, like tie it to everybody's why. This is why I do it. This is why you do it. And I love that part of business ownership.
Yeah, and I think as clinicians, we we look for those patterns, we look for those cycles, behaviorally, relationally,
Yeah.
and what is either um, fueling that cycle to continue in an unhelpful way, and what skills do we need to learn and develop to stop the cycle from happening, and then
Yeah.
start a new healthy wanted
Yeah.
cycle. um, and so fill in the blank with those examples that you just mentioned in terms of what your company is doing to help our clients. When it comes to a business ownership, that's a lot of what I'm doing as a consultant as well.
Yeah.
It's just in that business arena, and that the idea of changing the way you think about getting help, um, it's it's recognizing those things that get in the way that are inside of us as business
Hmm.
owners,
Yeah.
um, and how do we navigate those and do it differently, so that we are more available,
Yeah.
to help those folks.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just so we can talk about that forever. Like
Yes.
the change, how do I get in the way of my own business growth? Like, oh man,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a constant theme for me, just like I didn't expect all so much stuff to come up as a business owner, and then you step into leadership and you're leading people and so much other stuff come up. But uh I know we could stay there forever, but we got to move on to the next change.
Sure.
So really the first change is we want to change how we think about getting help because the help you receive, whether that's consulting or your therapy work, helps you really connect with your why and get out of the way so that you can be, responsible and um, really creating an impact. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the second change that you need to make when you're moving from therapist to business owner.
Yeah. So the second one that I talk about is change the way you think about money and time.
Mhm.
And I put those two things together because I think they are kind of one and the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as clinicians, when we're sitting down and doing a session, that is our that is our hour, that is our time, that
Yeah.
is our skill, that's our experience, our expertise. And when you're in a hospital community-based kind of practice, a lot of that, I don't think is really experienced because you're on that kind of like salary kind of
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
You're showing up to do your
Hmm.
9,000 hours a week of sessions and notes.
Yeah.
Uh, slight exaggeration there, of course. But in private practice, it's I think even more critical to change the way you think about money and time, right? You cannot charge somebody $50 an hour because you feel bad about their financial situation and expect to keep your doors open. Um, Math is math. There,
Hmm.
there's I don't like math, so I mean there's a feeling to it, I guess. But at the same time, when you take into consideration your monthly lease payment, your
Hmm.
liability insurance, your slip and fall insurance, your city, state, federal taxes,
Yeah.
um, the phone bill, the Google Workspace subscription,
Hmm.
that's just rattling off
Yeah.
a few things, right?
Hmm.
We haven't even gotten to payroll.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to, are you bringing home a realistic livable wage
Yeah.
for you and your family? Um, that you only can work so many hours. You can only see so many clients in a week,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, understanding time and money is critical. I think in a private practice setting, especially with solo practice owners, there's not paid time off,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're not working, if you're not seeing a client, you're
Yeah.
not getting paid,
Hmm.
right? That doesn't mean we see 15 clients in a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
That's going to blow up in your face real quick.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so I try to help people think of like, okay, out of 52 weeks in a year, you're going to work 48 of them. That's taking a week off for Thanksgiving. That's taking a week or two off at Christmas. That's maybe a week or two of family vacation,
Hmm.
um, or sick time, with kids. You're sick, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I picked 48 just considering in about a year's time, hopefully you're taking at least a month away.
Yeah.
Um, and so if I'm seeing a client at, let's do, just easy math, um, at $100 an hour, which I think is low,
Hmm.
um, times, well, let me change that up a little bit. If we've got 48 weeks in a year, and we see 20 clients a week. Um, that's 960 clients a year, times 100 is $96,000,
Hmm.
right? Um, to do 960 clients at $135 an hour is just under $130,000 a year,
Right.
right? And so that's, I'm not going to make $130,000 at a hospital or a community agency. Well, you're also not bringing home $130,000
Yeah.
because of the lease payment and the
Yeah.
taxes,
Right.
insurance, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's a very good
um,
point because you can get
yeah,
excited about, wow, I can make 130,000. Like, oh, but don't forget about your expenses.
right, yeah, and taxes. The more, and this isn't a political statement. This is just fact. The government doesn't generate revenue. The only way the government provides anything, any type of social service, any type of aid or support is through tax.
Yeah.
And so um, you're going to pay taxes. And the more you
Hmm.
make, the more you're going to
Yeah.
pay. And so it's understanding that, okay, if 48 weeks out of the year I'm going to be seeing clients, um, then what types of things do I need to spend my money on
Hmm.
versus nickeling and diming all these different fun features that are out there.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of um, draw the analogy to like all of our TV subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
You've got Netflix and Disney and
Yeah.
Discovery Plus and Paramount Plus and all these, subscriptions. And by the time you have five of them, you're paying as much as you were for cable,
Right.
you know, um,
Yeah.
probably more
Yeah.
nowadays. And so it's really slowing down and going, okay, you know, do I need this to actually make my business profitable?
Yeah.
Um, because that's the point.
Hmm.
It's got to be profitable if you're going to um, stay open.
Right.
Um, and that's a mind shift, and it's a hard one for therapists in a lot of
Hmm.
respects because a we're not trained in business, but b we want to help those that need to
Yeah.
be helped,
Yeah.
uh, which is phenomenal.
Hmm.
Um, there's just another side of it that you now have to wrap your arms around and get
Yeah.
acquainted with.
Yeah.
Another point I like to make on this, because I could go off on that tangent for days. Um, but the one thing I also try to teach is that return on investment or ROI, right?
Hmm.
And so, do I need this to run my business effectively? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's also looking at like, okay, am I paying somebody to cut my grass? Am I paying
Hmm.
somebody to clean my house? Well, no, I'm not paying somebody to clean my house. That's for rich people, or whatever, right? Um, I don't pay somebody to cut my grass because it's therapeutic for me to cut my grass.
Right.
Um, like I need that cathartic
Hmm.
sweating, moving, and that's also a lot of my podcast time too.
Hmm.
Um, I could easily make a whole lot more money in the 2 hours it takes me to cut my yard than it will cost me to pay somebody to cut my yard for me.
Right.
The return on investment aspect for me cutting grass is not financial, it's
Hmm.
mental, physical, emotional,
Yeah. Right.
right? I can't stand to clean my house, so paying somebody to come in and clean it every other week, you know, the whole house with two kids, my wife, two dogs, you know, that's a good 3 or 4 hours when you start to really do
Yeah.
everything.
Right.
And so to pay somebody to do that allows me to go work those 3 or 4 hours and
Right.
make 3 or 4 hours worth of revenue,
Hmm.
um, which again is going to not just allow me to pay somebody to clean my house, but it's going to save me that time, and I'm still going to make a profit. And so
Yeah.
that's just one example of that ROI aspect. It's not just, do I need this flashy little plugin on my website that's going to cost X, number of dollars, um, but it's also a matter of where am I putting,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that ultimately allows you to have a lifestyle
Hmm.
that, you and I have been talking about today.
Hmm.
It's being available for our kids' plays and
Yeah.
sports
Hmm.
and church trips and, you know, family vacations.
Yeah.
When you're having a battle PTO at a community agency or a hospital, um, you don't always get to be where you want to be when you want to be there.
Right. Right. For sure.
So,
Yeah, and just like on that ROI point, I think that's so important. And just kind of an example from my own world. Yeah, I see this a lot with websites. With do I invest in a website, or do I just DIY it? Um, and was this the third change that you wanted to get to, or am I okay jumping into this during the second change
um,
here?
change the way you think about marketing niche population
Okay, so
is that third one.
this will be a good segue then,
Yeah,
because that's what comes to mind. ROI. Obviously, like we're in SEO and website design and development, and so I talk to a lot of people who are like, I spent hours and hours and months getting my website up. I did it myself, and there's kind of like two worlds. Some people are like, yeah, I enjoyed it, and yeah, it took a long time, but I enjoyed it. But then there's mostly people don't really enjoy it, and they're like, oh, I spent so long on it, and then I realized that Wix isn't as good for SEO as WordPress is. I didn't know that, and you just spent like months of your time building a website when, back to your example, like you could have focused that into your client work or marketing that only you could do, that you are passionate about, or networking, or, something, spending more of your time focusing on building the business, learning the things that you definitely need to know rather than spending all that time on the website. So we just see that a lot, and then it's such a joy when someone does invest in a website, and then we do our work, and then we hear in the first couple of weeks, like I got 6 calls from the website, and I just got actually 3 new clients, and like, yes, awesome.
yeah,
And that doesn't always happen, but a lot of the times it does, and we're super excited about that. And so getting 3 new clients at $125 an hour, and then however, then you got to kind of know like what's your average, how many times that client comes, but that likely will pay for the website,
hmm
over time. So yeah, that ROI point is super important, and I think we can kind of segue into that a little more with like marketing now. But I just wanted to bring that up. That was where my mind went when you talked about ROI.
yeah, and I think the website is a perfect example. It to do it well. um, I've often heard, SEO is like, kind of like a 401k investment type of thing.
Yeah.
It is, um, it's the long game. It's consistency. It's
Hmm.
discipline, right?
Yeah.
I, you know, I'm, I'm, I'm not trained in website design, SEO, right?
Hmm.
I'm a clinician. I'm a business consultant. Um, and it's not something that I couldn't learn. Um,
Right. Right.
I just don't have any more bandwidth to learn it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that idea of, whether you're a self-pay business model or you're an insurance business model, I think is irrelevant. To have a website that as another clinician I can find when I need to make a referral
Yeah.
and know what this person is about, what is this practice about.
Hmm.
Um, Psychology today doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
The Wix website will be out there on Google, but it's not going to be something that pops up, you know, near the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it's also a place, from a standpoint of clients figuring you out before they ever pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Um, Clinicians don't go to TikTok to find a therapist, or any social media platform for that.
Hmm.
They go for entertainment. They go for maybe a good quote, or maybe a blog, in terms of following you there. But that's not even necessary. You know, when they're wanting to find a therapist near them that specializes in X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
that's where the website is critical.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a good website is going to be like you were referencing, doing the work for you from a marketing standpoint, um, while you're in sessions with other clients, while
Yeah.
you are on vacation.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
you're networking with other clinicians and things of that nature. It gives them a landing page, um, to send referrals.
Yeah.
I literally just sent somebody to your wife at Liz Fava Counseling,
Awesome.
uh,
Thank you.
a few days ago, for couples work,
Uh-huh.
because I've learned that I don't like working with couples, um, and I trust her work, and she's got great resources available for her people, um, and so it's something that I can hand to a client or another clinician and say,
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
call Liz.
Yeah.
Um, and we touched on it a little bit ago. Your niche population can change,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and I think you get out of hospital group agency or community agency, and you think you know what it is because you've worked with a population for so long in that environment. And then in private practice, you start to want to go outside the box, or you want to
Right.
keep it the same,
Yeah.
and you need to connect with those folks. Um, and so I think from a marketing niche population, there's a lot of solo practice owners that, um, just think they have to keep doing what they've always been doing.
Yeah.
Um, that sounded weird, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean. And then that idea of, okay, well, how do I pivot this, or how do I start bringing in this other population, and to work with somebody like you and your team, um, that can help develop SEO to specifically target. We don't have to
Yeah.
just dump all our existing clients and the
No.
niches that we are familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a skill, and if you don't have the interest, or you don't have the time for the nuances of website design and SEO,
Yeah.
um, going back to that money and time,
Yeah.
aspect,
Yeah.
it's an investment for a good website that is going to make you money,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you referenced it a second ago in terms of, um, the website paying for your client,
Hmm.
and it I don't know the going rate on developing a website these days, but, from like ground zero and building up, but in time, that should be a pennies on the dollar type of investment,
Yeah.
and you might look at that initial price going, holy cow, that's it costs that to develop a good WordPress website. Yeah,
Right.
but
Yeah.
again, changing the way you think about getting help, changing the way you think about money and time,
Hmm.
and how am I going to reach this market niche population?
Hmm.
I know you've got an audience all over the world. When I've attended your webinars and things like that, you've had people from different countries as well as all over the United States.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important piece to all three of these things, because some population communities are very insurance dependent.
Hmm.
Like, they are not going to be able to afford self-pay business model therapy.
Right.
Um, and other communities are, easily $200 self pay all day long, and they're full.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think that the website, if you're in the middle of Oklahoma compared to like LA or New York or Atlanta,
Hmm.
website's going to be pretty important in terms of all three of those locations, because I'm sure your website, has to speak very differently in LA or Atlanta compared
Yeah.
to
Hmm. Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more that needs to go into it long term.
Hmm.
But just back to what you mentioned, about what's the going rate. So like our standard package, which is custom design development, starts at around $5,000 for a 10-page website. So yeah, it is an investment. But and you're totally obviously preaching to the choir here, because I totally get that it is an investment, but it's such an important investment. I love what you said about like being on vacation or being in session, and your website is kind of like another employee. It's a marketing employee in your business doing the work to reach people. If done well, it can do that. If it's not done well, then unfortunately it's just a business card on the internet that hopefully somebody will find. And I think it goes back to just what you started with talking about, is just like that mindset of, am I worth investing in and worth getting the help that I need so that I can reach my clients, grow my business, to take care of my family, to impact the world, or do whatever is in my heart for the future. um, it's definitely a mindset piece. I struggle with it too, investing in my own coaching and things, throughout the years, but it's worth the work to do, because there's an impact that I want to make on this world, and there's things that I want to see my children be able to do, and some of that stuff takes money.
Yeah, yeah, and 5,000 was kind of the number I had in my head, but I didn't want to say it out loud in case I was horribly wrong.
No,
Um,
and that doesn't include copywriting or SEO, just for folks listening. So
well,
yeah,
but
it's a big
but you
investment.
said 10 pages,
Yeah.
right? And so like that is a drop in the bucket.
Hmm.
When you're seeing 20 clients a week for 48 weeks out of the year, at I think what was the last number I did, 130 a session or something like that,
Yeah.
$5,000 out of 140,000,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that is a drop in the bucket. It's also a
Yeah.
tax write off because it's a business
Yeah.
expense.
Yeah.
And nobody uses business cards anymore. You referenced
Hmm.
the website being a business card on the internet. Well, nobody
Yeah.
uses,
Yeah.
and people will look at a website and make it a judgment in a matter of seconds
Yeah.
about the quality of your clinical work.
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and that just baffles me, but I do it the same way with everything I shop, for online
Right.
too.
Yeah. Like,
um and so it needs to be done well.
yeah.
It's not about selling a bunch of stuff. It's about helping
Yeah.
people know you're there when
Yeah.
they need your help.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I know we can kind of talk forever and ever on this stuff and would love to, but we are coming up on time here.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate just your wisdom, David, and just kind of talking through, these changes that folks need to make as they step into that business ownership. And yeah, well, where can people find a little bit more about you, David? And is there any, and before we say that, is there any sort of last things that you want to say to folks listening about that transition from therapist to business owner?
Yeah. It's a process. And
Mm,
I think one thing that I valued, and I spoke to it at the beginning, is even if you are finishing grad school, even if you haven't left, your community agency or a hospital yet, I think one of the best things I did was getting a consultant before going completely out of my own. It saved me thousands and thousands of dollars in mistakes. It saved me time,
yeah.
um, because I was working with somebody that knew what they were doing,
Yeah.
and they had done it, before.
Yeah.
And so you can find us at wisepracticeconsulting.com. Then we're also on Instagram. We have webinars, we have masterminds. all focused on these topics. We also have a community called the Wise Practice Community, and that's a membership community with folks all over the country. And we have every Wednesday of each month, Wise Teaching is one Wednesday. The next Wednesday is Wise Advice. And usually with teaching, Whitney or myself or Amy, the other consultant, is teaching on a specific topic.
Hmm.
Wise Advice, we're bringing in an industry expert like yourself would come in and
Hmm.
you've done that as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have Wise Q&A where you can hop on Zoom for the hour and just ask whatever questions you have to
Hmm.
myself, Whitney, Amy. And then we've got Wise Work is the last Wednesday. And that's just grinding in and getting into numbers or catching up on emails or it's more focused on accountability,
Cool. Very
getting
cool.
stuff done. And we've got accountability groups for our community members as well. Um,
Yeah.
and so um, I think in the show notes, my Calendly link will be available to
Yep.
anybody,
Yeah.
and I will do a free 30-minute um, initial consult for anybody that's got some questions and um, wanting to get started on stuff.
Yeah, so we'll put all that stuff in the show notes for this episode. I can't say enough good things about Whitney and David and what they're doing with Wise Practice Consulting. My wife is a part of the mastermind group as well, and she's just got nothing but great value and direction, and just being surrounded by people who are going after the same things, but also receiving consultation from folks who have already gone before them has been just priceless. So definitely check them out and check out the links in the show notes. And David, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.